Hi, my name's David Stoker, and I'd like to welcome you to Better Life in Recovery, the hashtag HopeDealer movement. As a visible and vocal member of the recovery community, I'm frequently asked questions and for advice all the time. Some people are curious, some people are still using, some people are in recovery, and some just care about somebody who is struggling with a substance use disorder. If people in my community have those questions, I know that people everywhere do. We started this podcast to give you answers and support, because not only is recovery real, it's amazing. So to start, I really want to talk about the hashtag HopeDealer concept. And to understand it, for you to understand it, I kind of want to share a couple stories I've heard in the past. You may have heard them before, but I think that they're really important to the evolution of how today I have moved from calling myself an addict to calling myself a recovery support to calling myself a hope dealer. For starters, I'm really big on positive things. What that means is I don't like to do, say, relapse prevention. I'd rather do recovery enhancement with somebody. I don't want to sit there and talk to them about how big and bad their relapse is going to be and the things to avoid, places to stay away from, and the things not to do. Instead, I would rather talk to them about things they can add to their life, positive places they can go, positive people they can be around, and positive things they get to do. You know, it's amazing the things we can do in recovery, and I don't think we should ever cut ourselves off. So the first story that I heard was about a man who was walking through a dark area one day, and he fell into a deep hole. He struggled and struggled to find a way out, but he couldn't. Finally, in despair, he sat down, he buried his head in his hands, and before long, he heard footsteps above him, and he called out. He heard the footsteps come to the edge, and a couple people peeked over, and they immediately began to lecture him from the top of the hole. They told him about the dangers of walking through the dark areas and the foolishness of falling into holes that you can't get out of and how you should always avoid both. And then they walked away. What they said was true, but he was still in the hole, and it was really not helpful. I think of, I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, hey, just don't do drugs. Hey, why don't you just stop? And I always think, wow, you know what? I wish somebody would have told me that 25 years ago so I didn't have to go through a quarter century of substance use. Unfortunately, I never thought about that. Not very helpful. Shortly afterward, he heard a few more footsteps, and he called out. And they also stopped and walked to the edge. And they looked down at him, and there was a look of compassion in their faces. And they told him that his problem was primarily a spiritual one. They threw down a Bible, and they recommended some verses. And they said, hey, let us pray for you. And you can pray after we leave, because we really suggest you do that. It'll make you feel better. And then they walked on. What they said was true. Reading the scriptures, the verses, helped him feel better. And saying the prayers comforted him. But he was still stuck in the hole. Short while later, he heard more footsteps coming, and he called out for help once again. The man walking by stopped and looked down on the man in the hole. You look really stressed out, he said. I bet I have something that can help you. I think your problem's anxiety. So here's a couple of mindfulness exercises you can use. Doing these will help you feel better. And what he said was true. He taught the guy in the hole the mindfulness exercises, and when he tried them, it calmed him down, and he felt better. But he was still stuck in the hole. Time passed, and more footsteps were heard. He called out, and a couple of heads peeked down at him. Instantly, there was a look of concern on their faces. And they said, you know what? We're doctors. And we have just what you need. They tossed him down some medication, and they told him to take one now. He took the medication, and it wasn't very long after the men walked off that he was feeling better. But he was still in the hole. A little while later, he heard more footsteps coming, and he didn't even bother to call out. All the hope he had was gone. He knew that he'd never get out of the hole. There had been so many people that had come by there to try to talk to him. And he heard the footsteps grow closer anyway. And he looked up, and there's a man that looked down at him. And without saying a word, without judging him, without giving him advice, without saying anything, the guy jumped down in the hole with him. And the guy looked at him, he said, what are you doing? Now we're both stuck in this hole. And the guy said, you know what? It's okay, I've been in this hole before, and I know the way out. And together they walked out of the hole together. Now that is the importance of a hope dealer. A hope dealer is somebody with a lived experience that's able to share that experience to somebody else. So There's a lot of power in lived experience. It's nice to know that somebody's been where you are. In fact, I would say that that's the biggest strength of the Hope Dealer is this. I can talk to somebody who is tied a knot in the end of their rope and they are about to give up. They are about to let down because nobody's ever been where they've been. Nobody's ever been through the things that they've been through. And over the course of me talking to them, using my story, which is the most important tool I have, I can show them that not only is recovery possible, but that it's real. And it's not just possible, it's happening right now because it happened to me. That's the power. So another story that I heard was about a young girl who was walking along a beach. And there was a gentleman watching her from the porch of his beach home. And he saw her picking things up and throwing them into the ocean. And he wasn't sure what she was doing. And he would see people walk by and kind of point at her and kind of talk, whisper among themselves and walk off. Eventually, his curiosity got the better of him. And he walked down to the girl. And as he got closer, he saw that she was picking up starfish. And she was throwing them one at a time into the ocean. And he walked up to her and he's like, why are you wasting your time? If you look, there's thousands of these starfish that are washed up on this beach. And this beach goes for miles. He said, do you really think you're making a difference? And she picked up a starfish and she threw it into the water. And she said, well, I made a difference to that one. And then she picked up a starfish, threw it in the water. And she said, you know what? I made a difference to that one too. As the old man sat there and watched her throw those starfish back into the ocean, he was overcome by what she was doing, by how she was making a difference. And he started helping her. And next thing you know, the other people around started throwing them too. And before you know it, all the starfish on the beach were thrown back into the ocean. I am not saying that we are going to save everybody out there. And I am not saying that we are going to have this amazing impact on all the people that come into our lives and that all of the people that come into our lives are going to walk away better, or that we're going to start helping people and everybody's going to jump in. Because my experience is that I have tried to, as I help, other people get involved, but it takes a lot out of you. There's this thing called compassion fatigue. And basically it happens whenever you work with people who have lots of trauma, depression, anxiety. And when you work with people, you take that in. And some of us are not very good at compartmentalizing. I'm not. I'll be the first one to say that. Since May of 2015, I personally know 63 people that have died just here in Greene County. That doesn't count people from outside. And I stopped counting a couple months ago because I got to a point where I would rather talk about victory than talk about the people who unfortunately don't make it out. Over 50 of those were opioid overdoses. Then we had cocaine, methamphetamine, a benzo, a couple suicides, and a couple homicides. Now, I see those people's faces when I go to sleep, when I lay down. I'm not really good at compartmentalizing and decompressing. So compassion fatigue could set in, but fortunately I found outlets. We're looking at buying, I think, 10 or 12 kayaks for the stream team for next year, because being on the lake in a kayak is like my second church. That is my home away from home. That is my happy place. I also see 2 or 3 movies a week with nobody, all by myself, so that I don't have to listen to people talking to me, and I turn off my cell phone because that's something else that I have to do for myself. You've got to find out what that thing is, or you will burn out. So for some people, it might be yoga. For some people, it might be twists and wrenches. Find that thing to cause you riding a motorcycle, whatever your happy place is. And gratitude list. I mean, that's another thing that I do every morning that starts my day off right. And I will actually do probably an entire podcast just on the gratitude list and a couple other self-care things that we can do. So what I am saying is this: self-care is really important, because we are not going to be able to help everybody. The thing is, when somebody that you're working with passes away, it's not your fault any more than it is your success whenever they do well. Honestly, we meet people where they're at. We teach them tools, and a lot of times it's already tools that they have that they forgot they had. And we give them hope because we've been to a similar place and we found victory on the other side. That's the really cool thing about the Hope Dealer. So a Hope Dealer is somebody with lived experience that uses their experience to help others. It's someone who meets you where you're at, that helps you work a self-directed life. It's somebody who meets you with love and compassion. I mean, in my opinion, every single person can be a Hope Dealer, because I have yet to meet somebody who didn't have a hurt, a habit, or a hang-up that they've overcome in their life. And because of that, we can sit there and take that hurt, habit, hang up, that life-consuming issue, whatever that thing may be that we've overcome, and we can use our victory to encourage others. A Hope Dealer could be somebody, a veteran that's come back from combat, that had really bad PTSD and has been able to get to a place where it's not consuming their life. It could be, I've got friends who have gone through cancer and overcame cancer. And trust me, when somebody comes up to me that just found out that they've been diagnosed with cancer, those are the people that I send them to. Those are the Hope Dealers for somebody who has cancer, because they've been there. They can tell them exactly what it's like. When I have a parent come to me, I will talk to that parent, but a lot of times I'm referring them to our family support group or to other parents, because I've never been a parent of somebody with a substance use disorder. I can give them some ideas of what to do to help that person, but as far as their self-care and the things that they should be doing, that should come from another parent, because there are so many parents out there that have gone through that experience. So this isn't like a recovery, I'm a recovery rock star because I do all this great stuff. This is, I'm a Hope Dealer, and so are you. The difference between me and a lot of people is one thing. I call it the garbage theory. And the garbage theory, what it says is everybody has garbage in their life. Things that they've done, things that other people have done to them, and it stacks up. And a lot of times what we do is we keep that garbage inside of us, because I don't want other people to see it. I don't want other people to know the horrific things that I've been through. We call that the victim stage. Now, some people reach the survivor stage, and in the survivor stage, we start unpacking the garbage and we let other people see it. But at the end of the day, I still really don't know why those things happen to me. Life sucks, then you die. Everybody goes through hard things. It's a sinful world. It's an evil world. We might go through a lot of different things trying to figure out why those things happen. A survivor isn't enough. I like the thriver stage. In the thriver stage, I realized that all of those things happened to me, and I overcame those things so that I can grind them up into compost and use them to fertilize other people's lives. That's what the thriver stage does, and that's what a Hope Dealer does. A Hope Dealer sits there and grinds up all of those traumatic things, all the choices they've made that they regret, all of the negative things that have happened to them that they've done, and then they say, you know what, not only am I going to let other people see this, I'm going to actively seek out people who need to hear the victory at the end of this. That's what a Hope Dealer is. So there's another argument against Hope Dealers. Some people say, well, a lot of times they lack the clinical training. Personally, I do believe in getting some training. In Missouri, we have certified peer specialist training. And we also have the MRSS, which is the Missouri Recovery Support Specialist training. And in those trainings, one of them is for people with lived experience, and one of them is for people that don't have lived experience in behavioral health. First thing that I really like is that they address behavioral health, not just substance use disorders, not just mental health, because a lot of people are becoming recovery coaches. A lot of people are taking different trainings for recovery, and they're getting all kinds of amazing stuff to utilize with people that have substance use disorders, but they're not getting taught what they need to do whenever they're talking to somebody who may be suicidal, somebody who's living with depression, somebody who is in the middle of a psychotic break. I really encourage people, if you can find a training and you're a peer, go to a behavioral health training. If you look at the statistics will tell you 75 to 80% of people with a substance use disorder have a co-occurring disorder. In my experience, I spent 25 years actively using, 24 years. And I was a therapist for 8.5 years. And then for the last 2 years, I have been the Missouri Advocacy and Education Outreach Coordinator for the Missouri Recovery Network. So 10.5 years in the field on the Victory side of it. I would say that co-occurring disorder is way higher than 75 to 80%. I would say if you look at co-occurring disorder trauma, it's probably more like 95% of the people that I work with, right? So we really need to learn how to work with people that have both co-occurring disorders. So is education important? Yes, it is. But there's a guy, his name's Scott Miller, and he did some research on what they call the Therapeutic Alliance. And basically, he looked at Therapeutic Alliance, he looked at the treatment modality, he looked at education, he looked at a lot of things. And what he found was that the biggest indicator of somebody being successful in a healing relationship was the Therapeutic Alliance. And I could go through a big clinical thing about what a Therapeutic Alliance is, but it actually, to make it really simple and boil it down, it proved true the old saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And what he also found out was that it didn't matter the treatment modality, which means it doesn't matter if it's a psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist, or a peer. What matters is that they're able to take feedback and develop that relationship with the person that they're working with. So developing that relationship is super important. So that right there is the hashtag HopeDealer part of it. Transforming lives with recovery, I think that one's really easy. I believe that I have an impact on some people because I'm a person in long-term recovery. And because of that recovery, I can transform other people's lives. Well, I can help them transform their lives. How about that? I honestly can't do anything other than support them, meet them where they're at, and give them that compassion and that spark of hope based on my life story, where I used to be and where I am today. And sometimes we may get really beat up, right? Because I'm sitting there and I am sharing my story with somebody and, man, they walk off. And I'm thinking, you know what? I thought they were doing so good and I thought we had this connection. And you know what? Now they're not here. I remember, I think it was in 2000, the last time that I went through residential treatment. And I developed a friendship with one of the techs that was at the treatment place I was at. And we went through some stuff together. Like, I thought I was going to get kicked out after I'd been there for about a week and a half. My roommate had left. And when he left, he was like, hey, I just want you to let you know, I've got some benzodiazepines that are hidden up there in the ceiling. And I sat on it for a couple days. And then I went to the tech. He was an overnight tech. And I talked to him, and I was like, listen, I know I'm going to get kicked out because I've known about this, but man, I don't want to get kicked out. I really think I can do it this time. And he's like, man, you've been kicking tail. You came to me. You've been honest. He's like, how about you and me both tomorrow go to the director and talk to him when they get there? And he said, are you willing to do UA? And I'm like, absolutely. I've been here for a week and a half. Everything should be out of my system. So he went to bat for me, and we kind of developed a relationship. I still wasn't sleeping really well back then, kind of like I am now, kind of like ever, I guess. Difference is now I sleep about 4 hours a night. I used to sleep once a week, so I guess I sleep better now. You know, at least it's nightly. But I was having problems sleeping, so me and him talked a lot, and I got out of treatment, and it was about 2 weeks after I got out of treatment, the guy that I had bought, I was buying my house from, what I didn't, unbeknownst to me, his grandmother, he had stashed drugs at his grandma's house. And she lived in a retirement home. He'd stashed drugs in her closet. She got busted and went to jail. And he got in trouble. And I guess he was using the house payments that I was giving him to pay for his attorney. And I got a letter saying, hey, if we don't have X amount of dollars by this date, we'll auction your house off. So, needless to say, I did what everybody did, and don't want to get too war story about it, but honestly, I was like, you know what, I'll just do a burn, and then I'll sell it, but I won't do anything. So, needless to say, I did a burn, and then I was like, well, I better make sure it breaks down okay. I haven't done this in a while, and needless to say, I ended up going on about a month-long run, and I didn't talk to Jay again, who was the tech. But about a year later, I finally reached a point where I knew something had to change, and I left everything I had. I used to go on runs to Humble, Texas. And I grabbed a duffel bag of clothes, said I was going on a run, and I left my house, I left my vehicle, I left everything that I had behind, because I knew if I had to make that payment on my car, that desire for money would make me go back to my old life. So I left everything behind. I went back to Springfield, which just happened to be where Jay the tech lived. And I ended up, he was the first person that I got a hold of. And he took me to multiple meetings over the course of, he took me to 3 meetings in one day. And I got a phone list from those meetings, and I called people, and I used people for rides. And our relationship developed, and he taught me a lot of really good stuff. But he could have walked away whenever I went back out there with his head shook low. But instead what he did was he planted a pebble in my shoe. And every once in a while, I would step on that pebble, and it would remind me of everything, the advice that he'd given me, all the things that he'd said. And I was able to take that later when finally everything got to be too much. And then it started making sense, and everything he said to me came true. And I sought him out as soon as I got to Springfield and found out that I had a place to live with my mom. So don't feel like you're not doing any good, right? Definitely don't feel like that. Don't ever lose hope, because I know sometimes we are going to lose hope. We're going to see so many of the people that we love and care about die. But don't ever lose hope, because you don't know the people that you've impacted. And even today, I have so many people that come to me, family members that come to me and say, you know what, my kid's no longer here. I got a phone call one time with my wife, and I will tell you, that we were having a discussion about the fact that I was hardly ever home. I'm gone a lot. If you really get locked into this business, you are going to miss a lot of family time. You know, you're going to miss a lot of time at home. I can tell you right now that, at the time I was working a job and everything, and then doing all kinds of stuff for free on top of it, because that's what we do. The way we're wired is we don't do anything halfway. We give everything, I'd say 99%. Because that's about as high as we can statistically possible. But, we give everything our all. We don't just dip a toe in the pool. We cannonball into that pool. And that's how I live my life in recovery. And I'm sitting there talking to her about it, and I'm like, I know that I'm not home the way that I need to be. And I know that I'm missing a lot of the kids growing up. And about that time, my phone rang, and it came over Bluetooth. Because I have automatic Bluetooth in my truck. And it was a mom, and she was like, hey, I think you're supposed to have coffee with my son this weekend. And I was like, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And she was like, well, I just wanted to call to let you know, I saw that he had that appointment written down, and he's not going to make it. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? And she said, well, he passed away last night. And I was like, oh my God, I am so sorry. I can't even begin to imagine what you're going through, and da-da-da-da-da. And talked to her for a couple minutes. And she was like, well, I just wanted to call to let you know that he wouldn't be there, and I also wanted to thank you. And I said, for what? And she said, you're the only person that said he was going to be there that was actually there. That's a hope dealer. We're going to be there when things are tough. We're going to be there when people are still actively using. People don't have value because they're sober. People don't have value because they're abstinent. People have value because they're sentient beings, because they live and breathe, because they have a heartbeat and a pulse. So that's the other piece. You never know what family member you might be impacting. I have multiple parents that work with my nonprofit right now. They're there because their kids have passed away, and now they want to give back to other parents. They want to try to make sure that that doesn't happen to other parents, and that they're able to give them support. And the really neat thing is that's one of those things we're able to do, is we're able to give them a place to land. To give purpose, because sometimes when you're going through that, you're holding on to anything you can possibly find. So, man, I don't know. Maybe this got a little bit deep there for me at the end. I can tell I start off all peppy, and now I'm kind of down. And the truth is, it's going to happen. I can start off days, the best day ever, and halfway through the day, I get a phone call from 2 different people to let me know that somebody passed away that we'd worked with. But also it's amazing how many people, now that we have the Springfield Recovery Community Center, how many people I see that come up to me at the center and they're like, man, I want you to know I just got through getting my associates and I'm transferring to Missouri State to get my bachelor's. And when I first started working with them, they didn't even have their GED. There's so much victory out there, because as much as we talk about the 22.5 million people with an active substance use disorder, sometimes we forget to talk about the 23.5 million people in long-term recovery. I'm one of those people. A lot of you people out there listening right now are one of those people, or somebody, and maybe somebody's actively using and you need to hook them up with one of us. Get a hold of us at Better Life and Recovery. Get a hold of us at the Springfield Recovery Community Center. Get a hold of us at the Missouri Recovery Network. Nationally, there is Facing Addiction. There's so many great organizations out there, and I don't ever want to promote one over the other. There's tons of them, I'm not saying. If you need support, call us. If you're in Missouri, there is Mo Network in St. Louis. There is Healing House in Kansas City. There's us in Southwest. There's so many different organizations, and I know some of the people that are listening right now have their own organizations. So if you want to, put a link up for people to go to if they have questions, if they need anything. I always say this. My cell phone number is 417-268-7489. If you have a problem, call me. And if I don't answer, leave a message, and I promise I will call you back, because that's what we do. And I'll admit sometimes it can get overwhelming, and sometimes I got to take a day off. But you know what? I will call you back. I promise, if you leave a message. If you don't leave a message, I don't know to call you back. I just see a number with nothing on it. So, in closing, I just want to say, man, thank you, each and every single one of you, for everything that you do. We're going to continue to build a strong network, not just locally, not just statewide, but nationwide, because that's what we need. We are in the middle of not an opioid epidemic. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We have increases in homelessness. We have increases in suicides. We have increases in not just opioid overdose deaths, but benzodiazepine deaths, cocaine deaths, methamphetamine deaths. In fact, I think I heard there was 30 states that actually have more they have more arrests due to methamphetamine than they do to opioids, and yet all you hear is opioids, opioids, opioids. And not to throw this out there, but I will say a lot of times it's been my experience that although opioids kill people faster, methamphetamine takes people's lives faster. And there can be an argument because nobody is exactly the same. They're both horrible drugs. They're both killing people, especially now that we have fentanyl that's going into both. We're finding fentanyl not just in heroin, we're also finding it in methamphetamine and cocaine. So fentanyl strips are really important. A lot of those other things are really important. Never using alone, making sure you're using with somebody else, always making sure that you stagger your use, let the other person use, set a timer, wait 30 minutes, and then you use. Never use behind a locked door. Make sure that you have Narcan, that people know that you have it and that they know how to use it, and so do you. If you get something new, a new batch, give yourself a taster. You can always go back and do more. You can never go back and do less. Make sure that you're not sharing needles. Make sure that you're not sharing spoons, wash, water, anything like that. And I'm not promoting drug use. I'm just saying, man, if that's a choice you're making is to still use, then make sure you're doing it safe as possible, because I don't want you to die, because your life has value. All of our lives have value, right? Thank you for joining us for the show. We look forward to talking to you next week. If you want to connect with us, have any questions or comments, you can connect with us at betterlifeandrecovery.com. Also, this podcast is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about the network at studiodna.media.